Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest mysteries and disappearances video. Haven't done one of these in a while, so I thought I would add yet another one here with this playlist. This one has to do with another older disappearance, in this case an outlaw, a bandit, someone who was a robber, ended up doing a string of robberies, specifically of stagecoaches. This was sometime in late 1800s to be specific. So he was definitely doing this for a little while. And then afterward, he ended up just disappearing. Nobody ever saw him again, although there were some theories associated with his disappearance and what happened to him afterward. So lots of good information, lots of rich info to share here. And then I'll showcase as much as I can. And as always, give my own thoughts and opinions on it. But you're looking at a picture of him now. His name was Charles E. Bowles, but he had an interesting nickname, which I'll use in this case for the video. He was known as Black Bart. So let's go ahead and let's talk about all this info associated with this bandit. And then let me see what you guys and gals think with regards to this. I still like doing the disappearances from way back when, because to me, there's always a chance something could come up somewhere that could suddenly solve that disappearance. Even if it's like 100+ years old, something could still come forward and allow that mystery to finally be unraveled. So yeah, let's go ahead and let's talk about Black Bart himself. So he was born, again, Charles Bowles. This was somewhere in and around 1829 to be specific. No exact date known with regards to his birthday, but he was born there in England, in Norfolk, England, during that time period. In fact, he ended up being born to some parents by the name of John and Maria Bowles. They were there along with 10 other children. Can you believe that? 6 brothers, 3 sisters, including himself. Big family. But when he was just 2 years old, he ended up actually moving. His parents, in other words, immigrated over to New York, specifically Jefferson County, and then that's where his dad ended up purchasing a big farm that was there, associated near direction of Alexandria Bay. There wasn't much else in terms of info associated with his life as a young boy, later on into his teens and so on. But what does happen afterward is that in 1849, so this would make him around 20 years old or so, him and his brothers, 2 of them, one by the name of David, the other one by the name of James, they ended up moving westward, specifically for the California Gold Rush. This was that time period where everyone wanted to strike it rich west. There was pockets of gold to be found. All of a sudden, locations could come up from nowhere. It could be just a dry, barren land one day, and then the next week, people are living there. They're all trying to get rich. Many of them failing, a few of them finding what's needed. I remember reading some stories too of those that did find the gold and other people were aware of it. There were suddenly lots of deaths too. Like all of a sudden, mysteriously, those people that found the gold would die and their gold would be gone. So all around, it's a very notable time in American history. So he was there for a little while, maybe about a couple of years, but it looks like they went bust. They ended up traveling back to New York in 1852. But even after a certain time period, this guy, Charles Bowles, ended up coming back with his brothers, again, David, and another one by the name of Robert. And then they tried to find gold once again. Unfortunately, it looks like some of the brothers ended up falling ill. And when that happened, right after their arrival, they ended up dying. So this left Charles Bowles by himself there in California, at least for another 2 years of prospecting. And then he decided to give up, and then he went back over to the East Coast. During that time period, a little bit later, about 2 years, in 1854, he ended up marrying a woman by the name of Mary Elizabeth Johnson. And then later on, they moved to Decatur, Illinois, around 1860. And then that way he would be able to raises now 4 children that he had with her. Things took a different turn, though, for Black Bart in 1862. This was during a time period of the Civil War. Apparently, he ended up going into it, like becoming a private within a 116th Illinois Regiment. And when he was there, he ended up prospering really well. He became a first sergeant within a year, but at a certain point, he ended up being wounded. And then afterwards, he received some commissions, becoming second lieutenant, first lieutenant, and then finally, eventually being discharged 3 years after he ended entering the Civil War itself. So after that time period, he came back home and he lived with his family there in Illinois. He ended up moving to another place, prospecting in Idaho and another place in Montana, once again for gold. It looks like he still had that gold rush within him. This plays almost like a prominent part because multiple times now you've heard that Black Bart tries to find gold. It's almost like a rush. So his next career as a criminal, one could theorize that that was a rush for him as well, a more successful one, in fact. But it almost like his destiny was becoming two into one. And what I mean is this: when he was there prospecting for gold in a certain area, he ended up writing a letter to his wife, specifically in August 1871. He said that he had a very unpleasant encounter with a stagecoach, some agents that were from that stagecoach, and in it he decided to exact revenge. So whatever happened with that stagecoach still remains a mystery, but it was enough. Again, he was there prospecting for gold. It was enough to make him think that he's going to switch careers, and that's when he took on more of a criminal career. So all of his time in terms of being a stagecoach robber, because that was his next choice as a criminal career, apparently started in 1875 and it lasted up until 1883. He was able to successfully rob stagecoaches at least 28 times. Can you believe that? He was able to do so multiple times through a trail that was called the Siskiyou Trail, which you're looking at a picture of here. It's a long one that ran from California to Oregon. And then he was there also being able to rob these places and rob the people there, but in a very notable way. And the reason why he stood out amongst other type of stagecoach robbers was because of his politeness. Can you believe that? He was known, in fact, as a gentleman robber. He was one that was invariably polite, never ever uttered any swear words, any foul language. And then on top of that, he always made sure that everything was done with the utmost niceness. I guess as nice as you could be when it came to robbing something. Like, in other words, he wasn't necessarily threatening people, holding guns to their head, screaming, torturing them, nothing along those lines. All it was just him basically finding where these stagecoaches were and then robbing them, and doing so in a very, very quote-unquote nice manner. In fact, in two such occasions, and this is what made him much more notable as well, this was between his fourth and fifth robbery sites, he ended up leaving poetic messages, one for each, so two total poetic messages with regards to the robbery, and that ended up becoming part of his infamy. And so more and more people started to realize that this guy, and he, I don't know why, but he decided to give himself the nickname Black Bart. I tried to see if there was more information as to why. Why was he called Black Bart? Why did he call himself that? But I couldn't find anything related to it. But in either case, he'd give that info to people, and he started to get more and more notoriety. And this word spread with regards to his robberies. Again, he did about 28 times total. Some other interesting stuff associated with him is that he was very, very afraid of horses. He always fled all of these robberies on foot. And then he always had a long linen duster coat along with a bowler hat. And then he used a flour sack with eye holes on them as a mask. So that also made him very distinguishable, obviously, from anybody else that was doing any type of stagecoach robberies at that time. On his very first robbery, in fact, was on July 26, 1875. That's when he robbed a stagecoach there, somewhere between Calaveras County in California, on a road between Copperopolis and Milton. That's when he decided to do a little bit of theatrics. He ended up again, right from the get-go, being polite about it. He politely ordered the stage driver, a guy by the name of John Shine, to quote-unquote throw down the box, which had to be the box of money, I guess. And in it, as that was happening, he shouted over his shoulder, "If he dares to shoot, give him the solid volley, boys." And then that's when the stage driver, John Shine, said that he saw some shotguns or some kind of guns or something else, rifle barrels, pointed at him from some nearby bushes. So realizing that he was outnumbered by multiple people, that's when John Shine quickly, absolutely complied. And then when the Black Bart was able to get the money, he vanished. And then afterward, when the guy, driver John Shine, looked at these quote unquote men with rifles, he realized there was nobody there. Amongst these actual brushes, whatever they were, or bushes, they were there a bunch of sticks. Like, in other words, they were carefully arranged sticks to make it look like they were men and made it look like they were holding rifles. So again, bit of theatrics when it comes to it, because that would have taken time and patience, but he had the wherewithal to do so, the intelligence to do so as well, to make it seem like he was definitely there with other people when he wasn't, and that was his very first robbery. Interestingly enough, he ended up stealing $160, which today is about $5,200 from that robbery. So again, 28 robberies later, we'll cut to his final one. His very, very last holdup occurred on November 3rd, 1883. And then that's when, once again, he was there near an area of Copperopolis. He once again had a flour sack mask with those two eye holes. He ended up pulling the driver over by a guy by the name of Reason McConnell. And when that happened, that's when there was a little bit of a scuffle. This was because originally the driver, Reason McConnell, was there to meet up a 19-year-old son of the ferry owner, a guy by the name of Jimmy Rolleri. Well, he ended up stopping on some hill, and he wanted to, I guess, go to another area. I guess he walked away from that stagecoach, but when he went back, he realized that the stagecoach wasn't there, ended up walking towards another area. And then that's when he saw the stage driver and this quote-unquote team of horses. It was another almost simple robbery from Black Bart, because Black Bart had simply come around from a corner, in this case from behind a rock. He had a shotgun in his hand. He ended up forcing McConnell to unhitch that stagecoach and then take him over to another crest of the hill, and then that's when he attempted to remove that strongbox, the one that's associated with that money. The only problem was that it was actually bolted to the floor, so this was going to take some time in order to do so. But it did happen. He got the actual box of money, and as he was leaving, the other guy, Jimmy Rolleri, and then he was with someone else. He was with also Reason McConnell. I guess they ended up joining towards some place, and when that happened, that's when they took enough time to fire at Black Bart. Again, Black Bart left basically by foot. He didn't ride horses, so they would have probably caught up to him if they had their own horses that they were using at the time. But they fired at him twice and missed, and then they fired one more time as Black Bart ran into some thicket, and then that's when he had been hit. He actually had been hit because they found a small bloodstained bundle of mail that was there. In fact, Black Bart was hit so prominently that he ended up leaving some other things as well with regards to that location. He didn't have the time essentially to pick everything up that he normally would and not leave a trace of him afterwards. But they found that stuff. He disappeared, but they were able to find a handkerchief, and they also found a rotten log with a stuffed sack. Inside this stack was about $500 in gold coins, and then everything else they were able to find a manuscript. They were also able to find other type of articles that were associated with it. It ended up being that the third or fourth shot hit Bowles, and then that's when again he had a wound, but it was to his hand, but that was delaying him enough to leave all that stuff there. But those personal items were investigated. There were some eyeglasses that were found as well, some food that was there nearby. This handkerchief though was the actual smoking gun. This was the thing, one simple piece of evidence that ended up finding Black Bart himself. Can you believe that too? It takes the good detective work to be able to do so, but these detectives did. There was one by the name of James B. Hume who ended up finding that information. Him along with Detective Harry Morse, they took this handkerchief, and what they did is they went all the way to San Francisco, and then using what looked like some marks within the handkerchief, they found out that it was a laundry mark, and so they ended up going to 90 different laundries. Imagine those were all the laundries there within San Francisco, and then they ended up tracing that mark to an area called Ferguson and Biggs California Laundry. And then once that happened, they realized that the man they were looking for was there. He ended up living in a modest boarding house. At first, when they encountered Black Bart, these detectives, they stated that he was claiming that no, that's not him. He was just a simple mining engineer. He ended up making quote unquote frequent business trips. But what the detectives realized once they were coinciding the dates of those trips, sure enough, ended up doing with those robberies. So eventually, Black Bart admitted it. He said yes, he ended up doing those Stagecoach robberies himself. But ironically, he was only doing so from a certain date beforehand, those before 1879, because according to his thinking, those were outside of the statute of limitations. And so because they were expired, he thought he was safe. But no, as it turns out, they still arrested him. He lied about his name at the beginning. Afterward, he said that it was T.Z. Spalding. But again, another piece of evidence on him actually showcased what the reality was. And this was a link to him with a name. The Bible, in other words, said his real name, and it was ironically a gift from his wife that was written with his real name in that Bible. So they had their man. They had Black Bart. They had him, and they knew his name. They knew who it was, and he was arrested. So he ended up being convicted afterward in 1884, but it was just for that very final robbery. That's it. I'm guessing they just couldn't pin the evidence associated with all those other 27 robberies to him. But that was enough. He was sentenced to 6 years in San Quentin prison. Being the ever gentleman that he was, though, he ended up being released early in January 1888. So we're looking at about 4 years or less because of good behavior. Unfortunately, though, for him, by around this time, his health had completely deteriorated. He had visibly aged. His eyesight was almost gone. He had also gone deaf in one ear. And whenever he was released, there was again notoriety associated to him, so much so that the media were there, all the reporters around him. He was known again as the gentleman robber. They finally captured him, and here he was being released. And so they asked him if he was planning on robbing any more stagecoaches, and he said, "No, gentlemen, I am through with my crime." So the very, very final days associated with him, with Black Bart, ended up like this. Shortly after his release from prison, he never actually went back to his wife. Presumably, he never went back to his children as well. Something about him just changed after that prison term. He did end up writing letters to her, I guess explaining in situations maybe why his thinking was that way. But in any case, he said that he was very, very tired of being shadowed by the bank associated with those stagecoach robberies. This last robbery especially, I'm guessing him being shot, leading to his actual prison sentence, having those years of life gone. He felt, quote unquote, demoralized. That was him. He wanted to get away from everyone. So he never went back to his wife. Presumably he never went back to his children. He ended up going, as his last known sighting, going to a hotel called the Visalia House Hotel. And in it, that was the last time people saw him, when he was checked in there. And then that was it. The owner was the very last person, presumably, to have seen him. The owner said that a man answering the description of Bowles, i.e. Black Bart, had checked in and then was never ever seen again. So who knows what happened to him afterwards with regards to his existence. He ended up going into that hotel, and then that was it. Nobody ever saw him afterward. Now, there are theories as to what occurred to him with regards to those days and anything else leading to it, or leading what happened afterward. Some people say that he actually ended up moving to Marysville, California. He ended up actually being a pharmacist. Can you believe that? Others state that he ended up moving to Japan. He ended up like living somewhere over there, I guess, for the rest of his life. And then others state that he ended up actually dying somewhere in Knights Landing, California. Unknown why he was there, what he was doing there. But the reason why people believe he's there is because there's an unmarked grave that's apparently linked to him. It's specifically at Knights Landing Cemetery in Knights Landing, California. In fact, you're looking at a picture of it here. So if this is him, if this is truly Black Bart, if this is his actual burial, then at least we know where he ended up there. But my guess is that his health again was so bad after a certain point, and he was again so demoralized with what occurred to him right beforehand. So he just wanted to live his life out, whatever short it was, I guess, by himself. So nobody ever saw him. He probably died just a lonely man, just by himself somewhere, and then he was found and buried there. That's just my guess with regards to this. But that's pretty much it. That's all the information associated with Black Bart, the mysteries and disappearances linked to him. Most of his life was known, but it was just those very, very last short years that his disappearance became prominent, and nobody knows what happened to him afterward. All there are to this days are just guesses with regards to it. But let me know what you guys and gals think with regards to this mysteries and disappearance. Let me know if you want me to do any more of these videos as well. All right, everyone. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.